The sun hammered Redemption Valley like a blacksmith working iron, turning the dirt street into cracked leather. Heat rose in waves that bent the horizon into something uncertain. 3 men sat their horses at the north end of town, their shadows stretching long and dark across the dust. Margaret Donovan stood in the middle of the street 50 yards from the riders. Her gray hair hung loose beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Her dress was faded calico patched at the elbows. Her hands hung empty at her sides. The youngest rider, 18 at most, slid from his saddle. His boots hit the ground too hard, kicking up small clouds. His right hand trembled above the worn grip of his colt. "You're Shadow Walker," he called out. His voice cracked on the last word. "You killed my father in '81. Daniel Lawson. Now you pay for it." The other 2 riders stayed mounted, exchanging glances. One spat tobacco juice into the dirt. Maggie stood perfectly still. When she spoke, her voice carried the kind of calm that comes only from having nothing left to fear. "Yes," she said simply. "I killed Daniel Lawson, 1881. I killed 19 people total. I remember some of them clearly. Your father is one of them." The young man's hand shook harder. Sweat ran down his temple despite the morning chill. "Draw!" he shouted. Maggie shook her head slowly. "I don't carry a gun anymore." The street held its breath. Somewhere a shutter banged once against its frame. A dog that had been sleeping in the shade got up and trotted away, sensing what people often missed. The young man's finger curled around the trigger. And then the world cut to black. 72 hours earlier. The cabin sat half a mile outside Redemption Valley, tucked into a bend where Willow Creek ran shallow over smooth stones. Smoke rose thin and straight from the chimney, barely visible against the pale morning sky. Maggie Donovan knelt in her vegetable garden, pulling weeds from between the carrot rows. Her fingers worked automatically, finding the invaders by feel, tugging them free with just enough force. The soil was still damp from yesterday's rain. It came away clean under her nails. She was 52 years old. Her face carried lines earned from squinting into too many sunrises, from too many years of looking over her shoulder. A thin scar ran from her left ear to the corner of her mouth, white against weathered skin. Her hands were strong-scarred across the knuckles, the hands of someone who had done hard work of many kinds. When the weeding was done, she stood slowly, her knees protesting. She walked to the creek bank where 19 small stones sat in a perfect line. Each stone was roughly the size of a chicken egg, smoothed by water and time. On each one, letters had been carefully carved with a chisel and hammer. Just initials, just dates. J.M. 1873, T.R. 1874, E.K. 1876. The list continued, each stone a small monument, each one a name. Maggie spoke aloud every morning like a prayer or a confession, or maybe both. She knelt before them now, running her fingers over the rough carved letters. Some she could still see clearly in her mind. The gambler in Dodge City who had drawn too slow. The bank robber in Kansas who had taken a woman hostage. The claim jumper in Nevada who had killed a family for their land. Others had faded to shapes, without faces, ghosts whose features time had stolen. That scared her more than the ones she remembered. The last stone read, D.L. 1881, Daniel Lawson. That one she remembered with perfect clarity. The memory came unbidden, sharp as broken glass. A wagon train at night burning. The crack of gunfire. 5 men attacking from the darkness. Maggie raising her Winchester, firing 3 times, dropping 3 bandits before they knew what hit them. Then the 4th man, Daniel Lawson, grabbing a merchant's wife, dragging her backwards, using her as a shield. His revolver pressed against her temple. Maggie's shot had taken him through the heart, clean, instant. The woman had screamed and fallen to her knees, covered in blood that wasn't hers. Afterward, when the bodies were searched, Maggie had found a letter in Daniel's coat pocket. The paper was worn thin from being folded and unfolded many times. The handwriting was a woman's, careful and neat. "Please come home," it said. "The children ask about you every night. I tell them their father is working to make a better life for us, but they miss you. I miss you. Please, Daniel. Whatever you're doing out there, it's not worth losing your family. Come home." There had been a photograph, too. A woman and 2 children, standing stiff and formal, before a painted backdrop. The woman looked tired. The children looked like children everywhere, hopeful and unaware of how hard the world could be. Maggie had kept the letter and photograph for 3 days, carrying them like a weight in her pocket. Then she had burned them, watching the paper curl and blacken the faces, disappearing into ash. But she could still see them clearly 10 years later. The woman's sad eyes, the little girl's crooked smile, the boy who couldn't have been more than 8, standing with his father's serious expression. That was the last time Maggie had pulled a trigger with the intention of ending a life. She had hung up. Her guns changed her name from Ellen Walker to Margaret Donovan, and disappeared into this valley like smoke into wind. She stood now, leaving the stones by the creek, and walked back toward the cabin. The chickens scattered at her approach, clucking their complaints. She scattered feed from a tin bucket, watching them peck and jostle their simple world of eating and sleeping and laying eggs. Sometimes she envied them. The sound of hoofbeats pulled her attention to the road. A single rider approached, sitting easy in the saddle, leading a pack mule loaded with tools and supplies. The man was perhaps 30, lean and weathered, with dark hair and darker eyes that took in everything without seeming to stare. He reined up at the edge of her property, touching the brim of his hat. "Morning, ma'am," he said. "Name's Cole Brennan. I'm a blacksmith looking for work and a place to set up shop. I heard in town you might have land to rent." Maggie studied him. His hands were thick and scarred from forge work. His clothes were worn but clean. His horse was well cared for. The mule stood patient and calm, the mark of someone who treated his animals right. "I have land," she said, "but I don't need a blacksmith." "Maybe not," Cole replied, "but the valley does. Nearest smithy is 2 days' ride. Folks here are making do with bent nails and cracked axles." He gestured toward the flat ground beyond her garden. "That spot there would do fine. I'd pay fair rent, keep to myself, won't be any trouble." Maggie looked where he pointed. The land was good, level, and well drained. She wasn't using it for anything. "One condition," she said. "Don't ask about my past." Cole nodded without hesitation. "Fair enough. I won't ask about yours if you don't ask about mine." Something in the way he said it made Maggie look at him more closely. She saw it then, the thing she recognized because she carried it herself. The weight, the careful way he held himself like a man trying not to disturb something fragile. $20 a month, she said. First month in advance. Cole dismounted and counted out the money from a worn leather pouch. Maggie took it and gestured toward the creek. "Water's good, plenty of cottonwood for charcoal if you need it. Town's a half-hour ride. I don't go there much, but you're welcome to use the wagon if you need to haul iron." "Appreciated," Cole said. Over the next 3 days, Maggie watched Cole work. He built his forge from stones gathered from the creek, mixing clay from the bank with sand to make mortar. His movements were efficient, practiced. He wasted no motion. The ring of his hammer on the anvil became a steady rhythm, almost musical. The smell of hot iron and coal smoke drifted across the property, familiar and somehow comforting. They spoke little. Maggie brought him water at midday. Cole shared his coffee in the early mornings when the mountain air still held the night's chill. They existed in a comfortable silence, two people who understood that some stories were better left untold. On the third evening, as the sun painted the valley gold and crimson, they sat on split-log benches outside the cabin. Maggie had cooked rabbit stew thick with carrots and potatoes from her garden. They ate from tin plates, watching the light fade. "You make a good life here," Cole said, breaking the quiet. Maggie shrugged. "It's quiet." "That what you wanted, quiet?" She looked at him, weighing the question. "It's what I needed." Cole nodded, slowly understanding in the gesture. "I know something about that," he said. Before Maggie could respond, hoofbeats again, this time coming fast, urgent. A single rider on a lathered horse pushing hard. The man who dismounted was old, perhaps 65, dressed in a black suit gone gray with trail dust. His face was all sharp angles and deep lines. He carried a leather satchel that he clutched like it contained something precious or dangerous or both. "Margaret Donovan?" he asked. "That's me." "My name is Isaiah Cormack. I'm an attorney from Denver." He pulled a sealed envelope from his satchel. "I have something for you. From a client who passed 2 weeks ago." Maggie's hands stilled. She didn't reach for the envelope. "Who?" A woman named Martha Lawson. The world tilted slightly. Maggie felt Cole's attention sharpen beside her, though he didn't move. "I don't know anyone by that name," Maggie said, but her voice came out wrong too tight. Isaiah's eyes were sad and knowing. "She knew you, Mrs. Donovan, or should I say, Miss Walker." The name hung in the air between them like smoke from a gun barrel. Maggie stood slowly. Her hand moved without thinking to where a gun would have hung at her hip 10 years ago. Found nothing. "What does she want? She's dead," Isaiah said gently. "She can't want anything anymore, but she left this for you." He held out the envelope. After a long moment, Maggie took it. The paper was heavy, expensive. Her name was written in a careful, educated hand. She broke the seal. The letter inside was 3 pages written in the same careful script. Maggie's eyes moved over the words, and with each line something inside her grew heavier and colder. "Dear Ellen Walker," it began, "you don't know me, but I know you. I am the widow of Daniel Lawson, the man you killed in 1881. Maggie's hand trembled. She forced herself to keep reading. "I have known who you are and where you live for almost 10 years. A Pinkerton detective found you for me in 1883. I paid him to keep quiet and tell no one else. I want you to know that I did not come for revenge. When you killed my husband, you freed me from a man who drank too much, who hit me when he was drunk, who took every dollar we had and spent it on cards and whiskey. You freed my children from watching their father destroy himself and us along with him. I know this makes me a terrible person to feel relief at my husband's death. I know I should hate you, but I don't. However, my son Nathaniel does not share my feelings. He was 8 when his father died. He remembers the good moments, the few times Daniel was sober and kind. He has built his father into a saint in his memory, and he has made you into the devil who stole his saint away. I tried to tell him the truth. He would not listen. I am dying now, Miss Walker. Consumption. I have perhaps a week left, and I know that when I am gone there will be nothing to stop Nathaniel from seeking you out, so I am writing this to warn you, and to ask something of you that I have no right to ask. When Nathaniel comes, and he will come, please do not kill him. He is 18 years old. He is angry and hurt and young. He believes he is doing something righteous. I have tried to forgive you for taking Daniel, even though part of me is grateful for it. Now I am asking you to forgive my son for what he is about to try to do to you. He will arrive in Redemption Valley approximately 3 days after you receive this letter. He is traveling with 2 friends. I do not know what you will choose to do. I only know that I could not die without trying to save both of you from what is coming. God have mercy on us all, Martha Lawson." The letter fell from Maggie's hand and drifted to the ground like a dead leaf. Isaiah spoke quietly. "She died 6 days ago. I wrote as fast as I could. If the boy left when I think he did, he'll be here in 3 days, maybe less." Maggie's voice came out as a whisper. "Did she tell him? Did she tell Nathaniel where to find me?" Isaiah shook his head. "No, but she kept the Pinkerton report. The boy will find it when he goes through her things. Everything he needs to know is in there." The old lawyer looked at her with something like pity. "She tried to protect you both. I hope you understand that." He climbed back onto his horse, nodded once, and rode away into the gathering darkness. Maggie stood frozen, the letter at her feet. Cole picked it up, read it silently, then looked at her. "You have 3 days," he said. "I know. What are you going to do?" Maggie walked to the creek and looked down at her 19 stones. The last light of day touched them, making the carved letters stand out sharp and clear. "I could run," she said. "Change my name again. Disappear." "You could?" "I could stay and fight. Kill the boy before he kills me. You could do that too." Maggie knelt beside the stones, running her fingers over D.L. Daniel Lawson's initials. His son was 8 years old. Now he's 18, 10 years of growing up without a father, because of me. "His father was a bandit," Cole said quietly. "He made his choice. And I made mine when I pulled the trigger. Now the boy has to make his." She stood, decision settling over her like a coat. "I won't run, and I won't kill him. Then what? I'll face him, unarmed. Let him decide what happens next." Cole was quiet for a long moment. "You could die." "I know." "Why?" Maggie looked at the stones again, all 19 of them, each one a weight she carried, each one a face she tried to remember, or tried to forget, or both at once. Because if I run, I'll spend the rest of my life running. And if I kill that boy, I'll have to put down stone number 20. I'll have to remember that I killed a son for the crime of loving his father. She met Cole's eyes. 10 years ago, I decided I was done killing. If I break that now, what was the point of any of this? She gestured at the cabin, the garden, the quiet life she'd built. What was the point of counting stones and trying to remember their names? Cole nodded slowly. Then he said something that surprised her. I'll stay. This isn't your fight. Maybe not. But I know what it's like to carry weight, and I know what it's like to do it alone. He looked away toward the darkening mountains. I told you we both had pasts we don't talk about. Mine has a stone too, just one. But it's enough. Maggie waited. The night pressed in around them, full of cricket song and the distant call of an owl. Cole spoke slowly, each word carefully chosen. I was in the Army, 1885. We were sent to put down what they called an uprising. Sioux families trying to leave the reservation, looking for food, for freedom, for anything better than what they had. He paused, his jaw working. There was a boy, 14, maybe 15. He came around a stand of trees running. I saw something in his hands. I thought it was a rifle. Cole's voice dropped to almost nothing. I shot him, center mass. Good, clean shot. Exactly what I was trained to do. The night was very quiet. It was a stick, just a stick. He'd probably been using it to knock down pine cones or dig roots or any of the 1,000 things a boy does with a stick. Cole's hands were shaking. He clasped them together. I left the Army that day, walked away. They didn't come after me. I think they understood. Or maybe they just didn't care about one deserter. I learned blacksmithing because it's honest work. You take raw metal, you work it, you make something useful. Nothing dies, nothing bleeds. Just iron and fire and honest sweat. He looked at Maggie. So when I say I know about carrying weight, I mean it. And when I say I'll stand with you, I mean that too. They sat in silence as full darkness fell. The fire in Cole's forge had burned down to Cole's glowing soft orange. The stars came out hard and bright and indifferent. Maggie thought about the boy who would arrive in 3 days. 18 years old, the same age as the young man Cole had just described, the one with the stick. She thought about Martha Lawson dying of consumption, spending her last strength to write a letter, trying to save both the woman who had killed her husband and the son who wanted revenge for it. She thought about forgiveness and whether it was even possible, whether it meant anything, whether it changed the weight of the stones or just taught you to carry them better. There's something I need to tell you, Maggie said, about why I stopped. Cole waited. It wasn't just Daniel Lawson. It was what I found after. The letter from his wife, the photograph of his children. She paused. I'd killed men before, 19 of them counting Daniel. Some deserved it. Some were just unlucky. I told myself I was doing right, protecting people, stopping bad men. But that letter, it made me see something I'd been avoiding. Every man I killed was somebody's son. Most were somebody's brother. Some were fathers. Some were husbands. And every bullet I put in them sent out ripples that touched people I'd never see, never know about. She picked up a small stone from beside the creek, turned it over in her hands. I realized I wasn't the hero of my own story. I was just another person making orphans and widows, justifying it however I could sleep at night. She tossed the stone into the creek. It made a small splash, ripples spreading out in perfect circles. So I stopped, changed my name, came here. Started counting. She gestured at the line of marked stones, trying to remember, trying to give them something, even if it's just their initials carved in river rock and a woman who says their names every morning. Does it help? Cole asked. No, Maggie said, but it's all I have. They sat together in the darkness, two people carrying their dead, waiting for the arrival of someone who carried his own. Somewhere in the night, a coyote called. Another answered. The sound carried across the valley, lonesome and wild. Inside the cabin, Maggie lit a single lamp. The flame guttered and steadied. She pulled out paper and a pencil, began to write. It took her an hour to finish. When she was done, she folded the paper and wrote a name on the outside, Nathaniel Lawson. She didn't seal it. He could read it whenever he wanted, before or after. It didn't matter. The letter said simply, Your mother was a good woman who tried to carry more than one person should have to carry. Your father made choices that led to his death. I made the choice to pull the trigger. None of this is your fault. But the choice of what happens next is yours alone. I will not fight you. I will not run from you. I will stand and let you decide. Whatever you choose, I hope you find peace. I have been looking for it for 10 years and still haven't found it. Maybe you'll be luckier. Margaret Donovan. She left the letter on the table and walked outside. Cole had banked his forge and was sitting on the bench looking up at the stars. 3 days, he said. 3 days. Maggie agreed. The night stretched out before them full of waiting. And somewhere riding through darkness toward Redemption Valley, a young man named Nathaniel Lawson urged his horse faster, his heart full of righteous fury and his mind full of memories of a father who had been gone for 10 years. The distance between them shrank with every hoofbeat. The morning of the second day dawned cold and clear. Frost silvered the grass, melting slowly as the sun climbed. Maggie worked in her garden, harvesting the last of the squash before the hard freeze came. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind was elsewhere. Cole had begun taking orders from townspeople who stopped by to have work done. A rancher needed hinges for a new barn door. The general store owner needed a replacement bracket for a broken shelf. A woman brought a kettle with a cracked handle. The work gave them something to do, a rhythm to fill the waiting. That evening, as they sat with bowls of soup made from the garden vegetables, Cole asked the question that had been hanging between them. "What do you think he'll do?" "The boy," Maggie considered. "If he's anything like his father was angry and certain he's right, he'll try to kill me." And if he's like his mother, Maggie remembered the letter, the careful handwriting, the woman who had tried to protect everyone even as she was dying. Then maybe he'll listen first. Maybe he'll want to understand. "Which do you hope for?" Maggie smiled without humor. "I hope he shoots me clean and quick. And I hope he doesn't, both at the same time." The second night passed slowly. Maggie lay awake listening to the creak, to the wind, to the small sounds of the cabin settling. She thought about running again the way she had 10 years ago. How easy it would be to saddle her horse pack, what mattered, and disappear before dawn. But she'd been running for a decade, and it had brought her to this small cabin, this quiet life, these 19 stones by the creek. Running hadn't freed her. It had just moved the weight from one shoulder to the other. On the third day, Maggie walked into Redemption Valley. She needed to be seen to be remembered. If Nathaniel was coming, he'd ask questions, and people needed to be able to point him in the right direction. She bought flour and coffee at the general store. The clerk, a nervous man named Peters, counted out her change with shaking hands. "Mrs. Donovan," he said quietly, "there's been men asking about you. 3 of them, young. They rode through yesterday evening asking if anyone knew an Ellen Walker or Shadow Walker." Maggie's heart beat faster, but her face remained calm. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. Nobody said nothing. But, ma'am, they're staying at the boarding house. They're waiting." Maggie nodded. "Thank you for telling me." She walked out into the street. The sun was high and hot. Dust hung in the still air. She could feel eyes on her from windows, from doorways. The whole town knew something was coming. At the far end of the street, 3 horses were tied outside the boarding house. Young horses, well cared for. The tack was good quality, but worn. Working gear, not showpieces. As Maggie watched, a young man stepped out onto the boarding house porch. He was tall and thin, with dark hair and his father's eyes. Even across the distance, Maggie could see the resemblance. Daniel Lawson had looked just like that 20 years ago, before the whiskey and the anger had worn him down. Their eyes met. Nathaniel's hand dropped to his gun, but he didn't draw, not yet. Maggie stood very still, giving him time to look, to see, to make his first judgments. Then she turned and walked to her wagon, climbed up, and drove slowly out of town. She didn't look back. Behind her, Nathaniel Lawson stood on the porch, his hand still resting on his gun, his heart hammering in his chest, finally face to face with the woman who had haunted his dreams for 10 years. That night, Maggie and Cole sat by the fire. Neither spoke much. There was nothing left to say. Tomorrow Nathaniel would come. The letter said 3 days, and 3 days had passed. Maggie had written her own letter to him, left it in the cabin where he'd find it if things went the way she expected. She had said her goodbyes to Cole, though neither acknowledged them as such. She had walked to the creek one last time, run her fingers over all 19 stones, spoken all 19 names. Now there was only waiting. Cole broke the silence. You know, if this goes bad, if you die tomorrow, those stones will still be there. Someone will still need to remember those names. Maggie looked at him. You offering, if it comes to that? Yeah. Thank you. The fire burned low. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. Somewhere, Nathaniel Lawson lay awake in a rented bed, checking and rechecking his revolver, rehearsing what he would say, how he would stand, how it would feel to finally have justice for his father. And in the cabin by Willow Creek, Margaret Donovan sat with her own ghosts, waiting for the dawn that would bring either her death or something she hadn't even dared to hope for. Redemption, or at least the chance to face what she'd done without looking away. The fourth morning came with a wind that smelled of snow from the high peaks. Autumn was ending. Winter waited just beyond the horizon. Maggie dressed in her best clothes, not fancy, just clean and mended. If she was going to die today, she'd do it with dignity. She braided her gray hair, pinned it up, looked at herself in the small mirror by the wash basin. 52 years looked back at her. 20 of them spent killing, 10 spent trying to make up for it. The math didn't balance. It never would. Cole was already up standing by his forge, though he hadn't lit it. Ready? He asked. No, Maggie said, but it's time anyway. They walked together to the road that led into town. The sun climbed higher, burning off the frost. Birds called from the cottonwoods. The world went on indifferent to what was about to happen. At the edge of town they stopped. This is far enough, Maggie said. Whatever happens, you stay here. Don't interfere. Promise me. Cole hesitated, then nodded. I promise. Maggie walked the last quarter mile alone. Her boots crunched on the gravel road. Her shadow stretched long in front of her. The town was silent, waiting. At the north end of the street, 3 horses stood. 3 men sat their saddles. Nathaniel Lawson in the center. His 2 friends flanking him. They had been waiting. Maggie walked to the middle of the street and stopped. 50 yards separated her from the young man whose father she had killed. Nathaniel dismounted. His boots hit the ground hard. His hand trembled above his gun. And then he spoke, his young voice carrying across the morning air, full of anger and pain and 10 years of grief. What mattered now was the gun, the young man's shaking hand, and the choice that hung in the air between them, like the dust that never quite settled in Redemption Valley. Maggie opened her mouth to respond, to offer him the truth, to give him the choice she'd promised. But before she could speak, time seemed to slow and stop freezing this moment, this confrontation, this reckoning that had been 10 years in the making. And in that frozen moment, Margaret Donovan, who had been Ellen Walker, who had been Shadow Walker, who had killed 19 people and spent 10 years counting stones and whispering names, stood unarmed in the middle of a dusty street, waiting for a boy to decide whether forgiveness was possible or whether some debts could only be paid in blood. Nathaniel's finger found the trigger. The metal was warm from his grip. His hand trembled, then steadied. The moment stretched, taut as wire, fragile as glass. The sun climbed higher, the wind died, and the whole valley held its breath. Nathaniel Lawson's breathing was harsh and rapid in the morning stillness. His finger remained curled around the trigger, the metal warm against his skin. Maggie watched him, memorizing his face, the sharp jawline, the dark eyes that burned with a decade of carefully tended rage, the way he held himself, trying to look older, harder, more certain than any 18-year-old had a right to be. She saw Daniel Lawson in every line of that young face. Not the Daniel who had died with a bullet in his chest, but the Daniel from the photograph, the one standing stiff and formal with his family, trying to look like the man he wanted to be instead of the man he was. I don't carry a gun anymore, Maggie said, her voice steady and clear. She held her arms slightly away from her body, showing her empty hands, the worn fabric of her dress. Haven't for 10 years. Nathaniel's aim wavered. Confusion flickered across his face. Draw, he said again, but the command had less force now. Draw, damn you. One of his companions, a stocky young man with nervous eyes, shifted in his saddle. The leather creaked loud in the silence. "Nate," the young man said quietly, "maybe we should—" "Shut up, Billy," Nathaniel snapped, not taking his eyes off Maggie. The third rider, older than the other two, perhaps 22, sat calm and watchful. His hand rested near his gun, but not on it. He had the stillness of someone who had done this before, who knew the difference between the idea of killing and the act itself. Maggie addressed Nathaniel directly, ignoring the gun pointed at her heart. "You're Nathaniel Lawson. Your mother's name was Martha. Your father was Daniel. He died in 1881. You were 8 years old." Nathaniel flinched as if she'd struck him. "Don't you say their names," he whispered. "Don't you dare." "Your mother wrote me a letter," Maggie continued, "before she died. She told me you were coming. She asked me not to kill you." The gun wavered more. Nathaniel's face went pale. "You're lying." "I'm not." Maggie took a slow breath. "She also told me about your father, about who he really was. Not the man you remember, but the man he became." "Shut up." Nathaniel's voice cracked. "She said he drank, that he hit her, that he took every dollar they had and spent it on whiskey and cards. That the day I killed him was the first day in years she could breathe without being afraid." "Liar." Nathaniel's shout echoed off the storefronts. His hand shook violently now. "He was a good man. He was my father," Maggie's voice gentled. "He was both those things. And he was also a bandit who took a woman hostage and put a gun to her head. That's when I shot him, to save her." Tears ran down Nathaniel's face now, cutting tracks through the trail dust on his cheeks. The gun dipped, rose again, dipped once more. "You took him from me," he said, his voice breaking. "I was 8 years old, and you took him away." "I know," Maggie said simply, "and I'm sorry. More sorry than you can imagine, but being sorry doesn't bring him back, and you shooting me won't either." She took one step forward, then another. Nathaniel raised the gun higher, steadying it with both hands. "Stop right there, or I swear to God—" "I'll stop," Maggie said. "But first I want to make you an offer." The older rider spoke for the first time, his voice calm and measured. "Let her talk, Nate. Hear what she has to say." Nathaniel glanced at him, then back to Maggie. "What offer?" "Give me 3 days," Maggie said. 3 days to tell you everything. About the night I killed your father. About the other 18 people I killed before him. About why I stopped. About what I've done since." She gestured toward the town behind her. "After 3 days, if you still want to kill me, I'll stand right here in this street with no weapon and let you make your choice. I won't run. I won't fight. I'll let you decide." Billy, the nervous one, spoke up. "It's a trick. She's trying to buy time." But the older rider shook his head. "No trick. She's unarmed in the middle of the street right now. If she wanted to run, she'd already be gone." He looked at Maggie with something like respect. "You're serious." "I am," Maggie said. Nathaniel lowered the gun slowly, his arms trembling with the effort of holding it so long. He looked at his companions, then back at Maggie. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you do this?" "Because you deserve the truth," Maggie said. "All of it. Not the version you've built in your head, not the story your mother was too kind to tell you, but what actually happened. And then you can decide what to do with that truth." The silence stretched. A door opened somewhere down the street and quickly closed again. The town watched, invisible but present. Finally, Nathaniel holstered his gun. The click of metal on leather sounded like a cell door closing, or maybe opening. 3 days, he said. But if this is a trick, it's not. Where do we start? Maggie turned and began walking back toward her cabin. "Follow me," she said, "and I'll tell you about the night your father died." The ride to the cabin was silent. Nathaniel and his 2 companions followed at a distance, their horses' hoofbeats steady on the packed earth. Cole emerged from the trees where he'd been waiting, falling into step beside Maggie. "You sure about this?" he asked quietly. "No," she admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." At the cabin, Maggie gestured for the 3 young men to dismount. Billy did so reluctantly, his hand never far from his gun. The older one, who finally introduced himself as Hank, moved with easy confidence. "Horses in the trough," Maggie said. "You horses in the trough," Maggie said. "You can make camp by the cottonwoods if you want. Or I have a barn with clean straw." "We'll camp," Nathaniel said quickly. Too quickly. Maggie nodded. "First things first." She walked to the creek and knelt beside the line of stones. The 3 young men followed curious, despite themselves. 19 stones, Maggie said, running her fingers over the carved initials. 1 for each person I killed. I put these here 10 years ago, right after I stopped. Every morning I come here and say their names, or try to. Some of them I can't remember anymore. She pointed to the last stone. DL 1881. Daniel Lawson. Your father. Nathaniel stared at the stone as if it might bite him. Billy moved closer, reading the other initials. Hank stood back, arms folded, watching everything. Why? Nathaniel asked. Why do this? Because forgetting them would make it too easy, Maggie said. And I don't deserve easy. She stood, brushing dirt from her knees. Come inside, I'll make coffee, then I'll tell you about September 15th, 1881. Inside the cabin, Maggie moved around the small kitchen with practiced efficiency. The coffee pot went on the stove. Cups came down from the shelf. Through the window she could see Cole setting up his forge, giving them space but staying close enough to hear if trouble started. The 4 of them sat around the rough wooden table. Nathaniel directly across from Maggie, Billy to his right fidgeting, Hank to his left perfectly still. Maggie poured coffee black and strong. Then she began. Your father was part of a gang that night, 5 men total. They'd been tracking the wagon train for 3 days, waiting for the right moment. The train was carrying gold payment for a mine sale, 20,000 in coin and dust. She wrapped her hands around her cup, feeling its warmth. I was hired as a guard, me and 2 others. We knew there might be trouble, but not when or how many. Nathaniel listened without moving his coffee untouched. They hit us just after dark. The moon was nearly full, bright enough to see by. They came from 2 directions, firing, trying to scatter the horses and create chaos. Maggie's voice dropped, remembering. I killed the first man before I even thought about it. Training, instinct. He went down hard. The second one tried to flank around a wagon. I got him in the shoulder, then the chest when he tried to raise his rifle. She paused, meeting Nathaniel's eyes. The third one I shot in the back as he was running away. I'm not proud of that, but I did it. Billy made a small sound of disgust. Hank silenced him with a look. The 4th and 5th men, that's when it got complicated. One of them grabbed Mrs. Henley, the wife of the mine owner, dragged her out of the wagon, used her as a shield. Maggie's hands tightened on the cup. That was your father. He had his gun pressed against her temple. He was shouting something, I don't remember what. The fear in that woman's eyes, though, that I remember. He wouldn't, Nathaniel started. He did, Maggie said firmly. I was 30 yards away. I had a clear shot at his head just above Mrs. Henley's shoulder. I took it. The words hung in the air, simple and terrible. 1 shot. He died instantly. Never knew what hit him. Mrs. Henley collapsed, covered in his blood, started screaming. Couldn't stop for almost an hour. Nathaniel's face had gone white. After, Maggie continued, we searched the bodies. Standard practice. Looking for identification, anything that might tell us who they were, who might come looking for revenge. She stood and walked to a shelf, pulling down a small wooden box. From it she drew a folded piece of paper worn soft with age. I found a letter in your father's coat pocket that night, and a photograph of your family. She paused. I kept them for 3 days. Then I burned them both, but I can still recite every word your mother wrote. Nathaniel's face went pale. Your mother begged him to come home. She said the children asked about him every night. She pleaded with him to stop whatever he was doing before he lost everything. Maggie's voice dropped. I memorized that letter, every word. It's branded into my mind. Nathaniel shook his head, unable to speak. Your mother wrote that she missed him, that the children asked about him every night. She begged him to come home, said whatever he was doing wasn't worth losing his family over. A sob escaped Nathaniel's throat. He pressed his fist against his mouth, trying to hold it in. Billy stood up abruptly. This is horse shit. She's trying to manipulate you, Nate. Make you feel sorry for her. Hank remained seated, but his voice carried weight. Sit down, Billy. She's answering his questions. Let her finish. But sit down. Billy sat glaring at Maggie with undisguised hatred. Maggie continued, speaking directly to Nathaniel. After I read that letter and saw that photograph, I couldn't shoot anyone else. Couldn't pull the trigger, knowing I was creating more children without fathers, more wives without husbands. So I quit, changed my name, came here, started counting. She gestured toward the creek. That's day 1 of your 3 days. That's what happened the night your father died. Now you know." Nathaniel stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. He walked to the door, stood there with his hand on the frame, his back to them. "I need time," he said, his voice thick. "Take all you need," Maggie said. "You have 2 more days." The 3 young men left, walking to where they'd set up camp under the cottonwoods. Maggie watched them go, then sat heavily at the table. Cole came in from outside. "How'd it go?" "About as well as could be expected, which is to say badly." She rubbed her face. 2 more days of this." "You think it'll change anything?" "I don't know. But I owe him the truth. All of it." That night Maggie lay awake, listening to the murmur of voices from the camp. She couldn't make out words, but the tone was clear. Argument. Billy's voice rising angry. Hank's calm responses. Nathaniel's silence. The second day began with frost thick on the ground. Nathaniel appeared at the cabin just after dawn alone. His eyes were red from crying or lack of sleep or both. "Tell me about the others," he said without preamble. "The other 18. Maggie had expected this. She led him to the creek, to the stones. For the next hour, Maggie went through the list, stone by stone, name by name. Some stories were short. A gambler in Dodge City who drew too slow. A bank robber in Wichita who killed 2 tellers. Others were longer. A claim jumper who murdered a family. A marshal turned corrupt. A young man who was just in the wrong place when Maggie's finger tightened on the trigger. Nathaniel listened without interrupting. When she reached the last stone DL, she stopped. "Your father," she said simply. "You already know that story." Some stories were short, some longer. Each one a life ended, a decision made, a weight added to the burden she carried. Nathaniel listened in silence. When she finished, he asked the question she'd been dreading. "Do you regret it?" "All of them," Maggie considered carefully. "Some of them, no. They were killers, rapists, men who would have hurt more people if they'd lived. I don't regret stopping them." She paused. "But some of them, yes. The young ones especially. The ones who might have changed if they'd been given the chance. And your father because of what killing him did to you and your sister and your mother." "How do you live with it?" Nathaniel asked. "How do you wake up every day knowing—" "Barely," Maggie interrupted. "I live with it barely. Some days I don't think I do." She looked at him. "Your mother's letter said she forgave me, or tried to. Did you know that—" Nathaniel shook his head. "She never told you the truth about your father because she loved you and wanted you to have good memories. But the truth is, Daniel Lawson was a complicated man. He could be kind, and he could be cruel. He loved you, and he abandoned you. Both things are true." "I don't want both things to be true," Nathaniel said quietly. "I want him to be the man I remember." "I know," Maggie said, "but wanting doesn't change what was." That afternoon, Cole approached the camp. Nathaniel and his friends looked up warily as he approached, but Cole held his hands visible and empty. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. Hank gestured to a log. Cole sat, accepting a cup of coffee from Billy, who poured it with obvious reluctance. "You're the blacksmith," Nathaniel said. "Saw your forge." "That's right, Cole Brennan. You work for her. Rent land from her. We're not friends exactly. More like 2 people who understand each other." Billy sneered. "Understand what? That she's a killer." Cole looked at him steadily. "That we've both done things we can't undo. That we're both trying to figure out how to live with that." He turned to Nathaniel. "You asked her how she lives with it. I want to tell you how I do." And then Cole told them about the boy with the stick. The Sioux teenager he'd shot in 1885, mistaking a piece of wood for a rifle. He spoke without drama, without trying to make himself look better or worse than he was. Just the facts laid out like iron on an anvil. When he finished, Billy shook his head. "So you're both killers. That's supposed to make us feel better." "No," Cole said. "I'm telling you so. You understand what happens after you pull that trigger. You don't just kill the person in front of you. You kill part of yourself too. The part that gets to sleep easy. The part that gets to look in mirrors without flinching." He stood. "Maggie's giving you a choice. She's standing still and letting you decide. Most people don't get that. The people she killed didn't. The boy I killed didn't, but you do. Think hard about what you're going to do with it." He walked back to the cabin, leaving the 3 young men in silence. On the 3rd day, Maggie gave Nathaniel the letter his mother had written. The real one, the one she'd received from Isaiah Cormack. Nathaniel read it slowly, his hands trembling. When he finished, he looked up at Maggie with eyes full of confusion and pain. "She thanked you," he whispered. "She said killing him freed her." "I know." "How could she?" He couldn't finish. "Because she loved you enough to tell you the comfortable lie while she was alive, and loved you enough to tell you the hard truth after she was gone. She knew you'd find out eventually. This way it came from her." Nathaniel folded the letter carefully, precisely, as if it might break. "I've spent 10 years hating you," he said, "building you up in my mind as this monster, this devil who destroyed my family." "I did destroy your family," Maggie said. "That part's true. But you also," he struggled with the words, "you also saved my mother from a man who was destroying her. How can both things be true?" "Because life's not simple," Maggie said. "People aren't all good or all bad. Actions have consequences we never see coming. I saved your mother and orphaned you in the same moment. Both things are true. Both things matter." She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the valley. "Tomorrow's the 4th day. The 3 days I asked for are up. So tonight you need to make your choice. Do you still want to kill me?" Nathaniel didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was small, uncertain. I don't know anything anymore. That's honest, at least." That evening, as the sun set in bands of orange and purple, Maggie returned to the creek. She sat by the stones, speaking the names as she always did. But tonight felt different, final somehow. She heard footsteps behind her. Cole sat down beside her without asking. "You ready for tomorrow?" he asked. "As ready as I can be." "What do you think he'll do?" "Honestly, I think he won't shoot. I think he's a good kid who's been carrying his father's ghost for too long. I think he wants permission to put it down. And if you're wrong," Maggie smiled without humor, "then tomorrow I won't have to count stones anymore." They sat together as darkness fell. From the camp voices drifted. Nathaniel and his friends arguing again, the same argument they'd been having for 3 days. Finally, as full night settled, the camp went quiet. The 4th morning came too quickly and too slow, the way momentous days always do. Maggie dressed in the same clothes she'd worn 3 days ago, made coffee, drank it standing at the window watching the sun climb. Cole appeared at her door. "It's time," he said. They walked together to the road, then into town. The same route as 3 days before. But everything was different now. Nathaniel knew the truth. The comfortable story he'd carried for 10 years had been dismantled piece by piece. The question was whether that would be enough. The street was empty when they arrived, but Maggie could feel the town watching from windows from alleys. Word had spread. Everyone knew what was happening today. She took her position in the middle of the street. Cole walked to the edge, honoring his promise not to interfere. Minutes passed, then an hour. The sun climbed higher, the heat building despite the autumn chill in the air. Finally, 3 horses appeared at the north end of the street, Nathaniel in the center, Billy to his right, Hank to his left. They rode slowly, deliberately, giving everyone time to see, to witness. 50 yards away, they stopped. Nathaniel dismounted. His hand went to his gun, hesitated, then settled there. He walked forward, each step measured. 30 yards, 20, 10. He stopped close enough that Maggie could see the uncertainty in his eyes, the way his jaw clenched and unclenched. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what my mother wrote, about what you told me, about all of it." Maggie waited, giving him space. "I came here to kill you, spent 10 years planning it, dreaming about it. It was the only thing that made sense of why he was gone." His hand moved to the grip of his gun curled around it. "But now I don't know what's true anymore. Was he the father I remember, who taught me to fish and told me stories? Or was he the man who hit my mother and robbed people?" "He was both," Maggie said gently. "Then who do I shoot for, the father I loved or the man I never knew?" Before Maggie could answer, Billy's voice rang out from where he sat his horse. "For both of them, you idiot. She's playing you, Nate. She killed your father. Nothing else matters." Nathaniel turned slightly. "Stay out of this, Billy." "No, I came here to back you up, to help you get justice, and you're just going to let her—" "I said stay out of it." The street went silent. Nathaniel turned back to Maggie, his hand still on his gun. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said quietly. "I don't even know if I should try." I'm not asking you to, Maggie said. I'm just asking you to make a choice you can live with. Nathaniel's hand lifted the gun from its holster, slowly, inch by inch. The metal caught the sun flashing bright. He raised it, arm extending, barrel leveling, pointed directly at Maggie's heart. And time, which had been moving in fits and starts all morning, suddenly stopped completely. Maggie looked down that barrel and felt something like peace. She had told the truth. She had given him the choice. Whatever happened next, she had done what she set out to do. Nathaniel's finger found the trigger. His hand stopped shaking. The whole world held its breath. And then from behind Nathaniel came the sound of another gun being drawn, another hammer being cocked. "I'm sorry, Nate," Billy said, his voice tight with tension, "but if you won't do it, I will." The second gun changed everything. Nathaniel spun his own weapon, still raised his face, registering shock and betrayal in equal measure. Billy sat his horse 20 feet back, arm extended, his revolver pointed not at Nathaniel, but past him, directly at Maggie. "Billy, what are you doing?" Nathaniel's voice carried a desperate edge. "What you should have done 3 days ago," Billy said. His face was flushed, his breathing rapid. "She killed your father, Nate. She admitted it. She's standing right there, and you're just going to let her walk away." "Put the gun down," Nathaniel said. "No." Billy's hand was steady, steadier than Nathaniel's had been. "I came here to help you get justice. If you won't take it, I will." Hank moved his horse forward, positioning himself between Billy and a clear shot. "This isn't your call, Billy," Hank said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "This is Nate's business. Get out of the way." "No." The standoff froze. 4 people caught in a moment that could break any direction. Maggie stood perfectly still, watching Billy's face. She saw something there. She recognized something dangerous. Not grief, not even righteousness, just anger, pure and simple, looking for a target. Nathaniel lowered his own gun slowly. "Billy, I'm asking you. Please, put it down." "He was like a father to me too," Billy said, and his voice cracked. "After my own pa died, your father taught me to ride to shoot to be a man, and she took him away from both of us." "I know," Nathaniel said, "but killing her won't bring him back. Maybe not, but it'll balance the scales. Billy, please." Nathaniel took a step toward his friend. "I spent 3 days listening to her, hearing the truth. It's not what we thought. He wasn't who we thought." "Lies," Billy spat. "All lies to save her own skin." "My mother's letter," Nathaniel said desperately. "You read it. She said, 'Your mother was wrong.'" Billy's shout echoed off the storefronts. "She was weak and scared and wrong. Your father was a good man who made one mistake, and this woman murdered him for it." Maggie finally spoke, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife through smoke. "Billy Marsh," she said. The young man blinked, surprised she knew his full name. "Your father was Samuel Marsh. Died in 1883 when you were 13. Kicked by a horse, broke his neck. Left you and your mother with nothing but debts." Billy's face went pale. "How do you know that?" "Because I make it my business to know," Maggie said. "Nathaniel told me about you these past 3 days. About how Daniel Lawson took you in, taught you things, gave you a place when you had none." She took one step forward. "I understand what you lost. I do. But shooting me won't give it back. It'll just make you the same as me. Someone who has to count stones for the rest of their life." "Shut up," Billy said, but his voice wavered. "You'll pull that trigger, and you'll expect to feel better. Expect the anger to drain away, the pain to stop. But it won't. It'll get worse, because you'll have killed an unarmed woman in the middle of the street while her back was turned." I said, "Shut up." "And every morning for the rest of your life, you'll wake up and remember. Not Daniel Lawson, not the man you're doing this for. You'll remember me, my face, the sound the bullet made, the way I fell. That's what murder gives you, I know. I've done it 19 times. Billy's hand trembled now. The gun wavered. "She's manipulating you," he said to Nathaniel, desperate. "Can't you see that?" But Nathaniel was looking at Maggie with something like understanding in his eyes. "No," he said quietly. "She's telling the truth, the same truth she's been telling since we got here." He walked toward Billy, moving slow and careful. "Give me the gun, Billy. This isn't who you are. You don't know who I am." Billy's voice rose to a shout. "You've had your father in your head all this time, perfect and noble and wronged. I've had nothing. Just the memory of a man who wasn't even my blood, who showed me kindness, and she took that away." Tears streamed down his face now. "I have to do this. I have to make it right." "It's already wrong," Nathaniel said. "Don't make it worse." For a moment, everything balanced on a knife's edge. Billy's finger on the trigger, Hank's hand hovering near his own gun, Nathaniel reaching toward his friend, Maggie standing still as stone. Then Billy made his choice. The gun roared. The bullet took Maggie high in the left shoulder, spinning her halfway around. She stumbled, caught herself against a hitching post, then went down to one knee. Blood bloomed dark against her dress, spreading fast. Cole was running before the echo faded, breaking his promise, not caring. He reached Maggie as she slumped forward, catching her before she hit the ground. Behind them, chaos erupted. Hank drew his gun, pointing it at Billy. "Drop it now!" Billy stared at his own gun as if he'd never seen it before. The weapon fell from his nerveless fingers, hitting the dirt with a dull thud. Nathaniel stood frozen, his face white with shock. The sheriff burst from his office, shotgun raised, taking in the scene with practiced eyes. 2 deputies followed, rifles ready. "What in hell happened here?" the sheriff demanded. "He shot her?" Hank said, his gun still trained on Billy. "No provocation. She was unarmed." The sheriff looked at Maggie, at Cole, pressing his bandana against the wound, at the blood pooling in the dust. "Billy Marsh, you're under arrest." Billy didn't resist as the deputies took him. He looked at Nathaniel with betrayed eyes. "I did it for you," he said. "For your father." Nathaniel said nothing. His silence was answer enough. They carried Maggie to the doctor's office, a small building that smelled of carbolic and old blood. Doc Harrison was 60, with steady hands and a whiskey habit he kept under control during working hours. He cut away the dress, exposing the wound. The bullet had entered just below the collarbone, angling down. Harrison probed carefully, his face grim. "Bullet's still in there," he said. "Lodged against the shoulder blade. I can get it out, but there's damage. Nerve damage. Even if I do everything right, she might not regain use of that arm." "Do it," Cole said. The surgery took an hour. Maggie stayed conscious through most of it, biting down on a leather strap, her right hand gripping Cole's hard enough to leave marks. When Harrison finally extracted the bullet and dropped it into a tin pan, with a clink, she passed out from the pain and blood loss. She woke 3 hours later in a bed in the doctor's back room. Her left shoulder was bandaged tight, immobilized against her chest. The pain was a living thing, pulsing with her heartbeat. Cole sat in a chair beside the bed, his head bowed. He looked up when she stirred. "You're awake." "Apparently." Her voice came out as a croak. "How bad?" "Bad enough. Doc says you'll live, but the arm's likely done. Nerve damage." Maggie processed this information slowly. Her left hand, the hand she'd used to pull triggers for 20 years, now useless. "Fitting," she said. "That's not funny. Wasn't meant to be." She tried to sit up, gasped at the pain, fell back. "The boy." "Nathaniel." "Where is he?" "Sheriff's office, giving a statement." "And Billy?" "Jail. They'll transport him to Denver for trial once you're well enough to testify." Maggie closed her eyes. "I don't want to testify." "You don't have a choice. He shot you. Witnesses saw it. The law's involved now." "The law?" Maggie laughed, a bitter sound. "I spent 20 years running from it. Now it wants to help me." She looked at Cole. "What did Nathaniel say after?" "Nothing. Not a word. He just stood there watching them take Billy away. Then he gave his statement and left." "Did he go back to the camp?" "Don't know. I was here with you." The days that followed blurred together. Maggie drifted in and out of consciousness, fever setting in as her body fought infection. Doc Harrison changed the bandages twice a day, muttering about stubborn women who wouldn't stay still. On the 3rd day, the fever broke. Maggie woke clear-headed for the first time since the shooting. The pain had settled into a constant ache, manageable if she didn't move. There was a figure sitting in the chair, not Cole this time, Nathaniel. He looked older than he had 4 days ago. The anger that had burned in his eyes was gone, replaced by something harder to read. Confusion, guilt, loss. "You came back," Maggie said. "Yeah." They sat in silence for a long moment. "Billy's in jail," Nathaniel said finally. "They're saying attempted murder. Could be 15 years. "I know. He was my best friend since we were kids." "I know that too." Nathaniel's hands clenched into fists, relaxed, clenched again. I have to testify against him. The sheriff says I'm a material witness. You are. He did it because of me. Because I couldn't. Maggie turned her head to look at him directly. He did it because he wanted to. You didn't pull that trigger. He did. That's on him, not you. But if I just shot you when I first got here, then you'd be in that cell instead of him. Is that better? Nathaniel had no answer. Maggie shifted, trying to ease the pressure on her shoulder. The movement sent fire through her nerves. Your 3 days are up, she said. You had your chance. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it, same as everyone else. I didn't choose this. You chose not to kill me. That's a choice. Maybe the first real one you've made in 10 years. Nathaniel stood abruptly, pacing the small room. My mother's letter said I should forgive you, that holding on to anger would only hurt me. He turned to face her. But I can't. I've tried these past few days, and I just can't. I'm not asking you to. Then what do you want from me? Maggie considered the question carefully. Nothing, she said finally. I gave you the truth. What you do with it is your business. Hate me if you need to. Remember your father however you want. Just do it knowing the whole story, not the version that's easy to carry. Nathaniel sank back into the chair. Hank's leaving tomorrow, going back to Texas. He said this valley's got too much sadness in it. Probably right. I thought about going with him, just riding out, leaving all this behind. Why didn't you? Because running didn't work for you. Figured it wouldn't work for me either. A ghost of a smile crossed Maggie's face. Smart kid. I'm not a kid anymore? No, I suppose you're not. The trial happened 3 weeks later in the Territorial Courthouse in Denver. Maggie made the journey in a wagon, her arm still immobilized, the pain a constant companion. Billy Marsh was brought in wearing shackles. He looked smaller, somehow, diminished. When his eyes met Nathaniel's across the courtroom, something broke in his expression. The trial lasted 2 days. Witnesses testified. The sheriff described the scene. Doc Harrison explained the injury. Hank, who had stayed specifically for this, gave a clear account of what he'd seen. Then it was Nathaniel's turn. He walked to the stand, slowly was sworn in, sat down. The prosecutor asked him to describe what happened. Nathaniel spoke in a flat, emotionless voice. He told about coming to Redemption Valley, seeking revenge. About the 3 days Maggie had given him. About standing in the street deciding whether to shoot. And then what happened? The prosecutor asked. Billy drew his gun. He said if I wouldn't shoot her, he would. I tried to stop him. He fired anyway. Did Mrs. Donovan make any threatening moves? No, she was unarmed. She never moved. In your opinion, was Mr. Marsh acting in self-defense? Nathaniel looked at Billy for a long moment. His former friend stared back, eyes pleading. No, Nathaniel said quietly. He was acting out of anger, and maybe love in his own way, but not self-defense. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty. The judge sentenced Billy Marsh to 8 years in the Territorial Prison. As they led him out, Billy looked at Nathaniel one last time. I hope it was worth it, he said, choosing her over me. Nathaniel didn't respond. There was nothing to say. After the trial, Nathaniel appeared at Maggie's hotel room. She was packing, preparing to return to Redemption Valley. Her left arm hung useless in a sling. She'd learned to do most things one-handed, but packing was still awkward. Need help? Nathaniel asked from the doorway. I can manage. He came in anyway, folding clothes, placing them in her bag with careful precision. I testified, he said. I heard. Thank you. Don't thank me. I just told the truth. They worked in silence for a few minutes. I'm leaving tomorrow, Nathaniel said. Going east. Denver, maybe, or further. I don't know yet. Running? No, just there's nothing left for me here. My mother's gone. My father's gone. Billy's well. He gestured vaguely. And you're not the monster I needed you to be. Sorry to disappoint. You didn't. He closed the bag, cinched it tight. That's the problem. If you were evil, if you'd laughed about killing him or shown no remorse, I could hate you clean and simple. But you're just a person who did terrible things and is trying to live with it. And I don't know what to do with that. Maggie sat down heavily on the bed. Join the club. I've been trying to figure that out for 10 years. Nathaniel pulled an envelope from his pocket. I wrote you something. You don't have to read it now, or ever. But I wanted you to have it. He placed it on the bedside table and walked to the door. There he paused. I'm not going to say I forgive you. I'm not there yet. Maybe I never will be. But I don't want you dead anymore. That's something, I guess. It's more than I deserve, Maggie said. Probably, but it's what you get anyway. He left. Maggie sat alone in the hotel room listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway. After a while she picked up the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The handwriting was neat, careful like his mother's had been. Mrs. Donovan, it read, I came to Redemption Valley to kill you. I left having killed nothing but the version of my father I'd been carrying in my head. I don't know if that's better or worse. I don't know if I'll ever forgive you for taking him from me. But I do know that I don't want to spend the rest of my life angry. My mother didn't want that for me. I think maybe you don't either. So I'm going to try, to let go, to move forward, to stop counting the years since he died and start counting the years I have left to live. I hope you can do the same. We both deserve some kind of peace even if we can't forgive. Nathaniel. Maggie folded the letter carefully and placed it in her pocket next to the space where her gun used to hang. 2 years passed. The cabin by Willow Creek weathered 2 winters and 2 springs. The garden produced carrots and squash and potatoes. The chickens laid eggs. Cole's forge rang with steady work, the sound of iron on iron becoming as much a part of the valley as the creek itself. Maggie learned to live with one arm. Simple tasks became complex. Complex tasks became impossible. But she adapted. Humans always do. Her hair went fully white. New lines carved themselves into her face. She moved slower, felt the cold deeper. 54 felt old in a way 52 hadn't. But she was alive. The stones by the creek now numbered 20. The new one sat at the end of the line, slightly larger than the others. Instead of initials, it bore a simple inscription that Maggie had carved laboriously with her one good hand. For those I cannot remember. Some mornings she couldn't recall all 19 names anymore. The faces blurred together. The dates ran into each other. Only a few remained sharp. Daniel Lawson, James Markham. The forgetting scared her more than the remembering ever had. Cole found her by the creek one autumn evening, sitting with the stones as she did every day. He'd become a permanent fixture, not a tenant anymore, but something closer. Not lovers, not quite family, just 2 people who understood each other's weight. Letter came for you, he said, holding out an envelope. Maggie took it with her good hand. The return address was Boston. The handwriting was Nathaniel's. She opened it carefully. Mrs. Donovan, it began. I am writing from Boston, where I have found work as a clerk in a law office. The city is loud and crowded and nothing like home, which is exactly why I chose it. I needed to be somewhere that didn't remind me of everything I lost. The work is dull, but honest. I have made friends, though I don't speak to them about my past. Some stories are too heavy to share with people who wouldn't understand. I still think about that week in Redemption Valley, about my father, about you, about Billy. I received word last month that Billy was released early for good behavior. 5 years instead of 8. I don't know where he went after. Part of me hopes he found whatever he was looking for. Part of me knows he probably didn't. I still haven't forgiven you. I want to be honest about that, but I also don't hate you anymore. Most days I don't think about you at all, which feels like a kind of progress. When I do think about you, I remember something you said, that you count stones so you don't forget the people you killed. I wonder sometimes if I should do the same. Count the days I spent angry. Count the moments I wasted on hate. Give each one a name so I remember not to go back there. Maybe that's my version of your stones. Maybe we all have them in one form or another. I hope you're well. I hope your arm is healed as much as it can. I hope you've found some kind of peace. I haven't found mine yet, but I'm looking. That has to count for something. Nathaniel. Maggie read the letter twice, then folded it and placed it with the others. Nathaniel wrote every 6 months or so. Never long letters, never asking for forgiveness or offering it, just updates, proof that he was still alive, still trying. It was more than she'd expected, more than she deserved. That evening she and Cole sat on the porch watching the sun set over the valley. The light turned everything golden forgiving, hiding the scars and hard edges under soft amber. You ever think about leaving? Cole asked. Starting fresh somewhere new. Every day, Maggie admitted. But I'm tired of starting fresh. Tired of running from things. This valley knows what I am. I don't have to pretend here. What are you? Maggie thought about the question. 2 years ago, she would have said killer. 10 years ago, she would have said protector. 20 years ago, she would have said hero. Tired, she said finally. I'm just tired. Cole nodded understanding. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun finished its descent. Darkness crept across the valley, gentle and complete. Inside the cabin, the letter from Nathaniel sat with the others in a small wooden box. Proof that some debts could never be fully paid, but also that some wounds could scar over, if not heal. The stones by the creek would remain. Tomorrow, Maggie would sit beside them again, speaking the names she could still remember, grieving the ones that had slipped away. It was her ritual, her penance, her way of acknowledging that she had no right to forget. But tonight she allowed herself a moment of something that wasn't quite peace, but was close enough. The stars emerged hard and bright against the black. A coyote called from the ridge. The creek murmured its endless song. And Margaret Donovan, who had been Ellen Walker, who had been Shadow Walker, who had killed 19 people and spent 12 years trying to understand what that meant, sat with the only person who understood and breathed and existed and counted that as enough. In the distance, a horse whinnied. The forge had gone cold hours ago. The chickens settled in their roost. The valley prepared for night. Somewhere in Boston, Nathaniel Lawson sat at a desk in a boarding house, writing another letter he might or might not send, trying to find words for feelings he didn't fully understand. Somewhere in a territorial prison, Billy Marsh had been released, walking into freedom with no idea what to do with it. Anger still coiled tight in his chest like a spring wound too tight. But here in this cabin, in this valley, in this moment, there was only the quiet settling of dust, the slow passage of time, the weight of stones and the people who chose to carry them. Maggie stood, her body protesting, her shoulder aching with the phantom memory of a bullet that had taken her ability to pull a trigger but given her something else. The certainty that she would never add a 21st stone. Cole stood with her. "Coffee?" he asked. "Coffee," she agreed. They went inside, closing the door against the night. The lamp was lit. The stove was warm. Outside, the valley held its breath, and the stones sat patient by the creek waiting for morning, when Maggie would return to count them again. Not forgiven, not forgotten, just remembered. And in the end, memory was all anyone could offer the dead. That and the promise to keep living, keep trying, keep carrying the weight, until the weight itself became a kind of companion. The last light faded from the sky. The first stars burned cold and distant. And when the dust finally settled, what remained was simply this: a woman, a man, a valley, and 20 stones that told a story about violence and consequence, and the long, difficult work of learning to live with both. Not redemption. That was too clean, too final. It would have to be enough. It was all there was.